May 13, 2026. Write that date down. That is not a rumor. That is not speculation. That is the exact day Meta flipped a switch inside WhatsApp that fundamentally rewired how artificial intelligence interacts with the private conversations of more than 3 billion human beings on this planet. Most of those 3 billion users have absolutely no idea what was activated. They received no clear warning, no plain language explanation, no genuine opportunity to understand what they were agreeing to. By the end of this video, you will. And more importantly, you will know exactly what to do about it before the deeper rollout reaches your account. Here is what you were not told, and here is the part that even most technology journalists failed to communicate with the urgency this story deserved. Between December 2025 and May 2026, 3 separate but tightly interconnected changes transformed WhatsApp into a fundamentally different platform than the one most people downloaded years ago, and the engineering of these changes was sequenced so carefully that nearly every public conversation about them treated them as isolated updates, rather than as the coordinated rollout they actually represent. The first change began quietly in December 2025, when Meta started routing direct messages through artificial intelligence systems for what the company described as service improvement and personalization purposes, requiring users to take active steps to opt out if they did not want their conversations processed in this way. The second change activated on January 15, 2026, when Meta formally banned third-party artificial intelligence assistants such as ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot from operating within WhatsApp's ecosystem, eliminating user choice and ensuring that Meta's own AI would be the only artificial intelligence system you could ever interact with inside the application. The third change went live on May 13, 2026, when Meta officially launched its new AI infrastructure built on what the company calls private processing technology, marketing it to users as a privacy enhancement while simultaneously deepening the structural integration of artificial intelligence into every layer of the platform. 3 changes, 6 months, 3 billion users. And almost nobody connecting the dots. To understand why this matters more than any previous WhatsApp policy update, you have to understand what WhatsApp was originally supposed to be, because the distance between the original promise and the May 2026 reality is the entire story. In 2009, 2 former Yahoo engineers named Jan Koum and Brian Acton built WhatsApp on a philosophical foundation that was genuinely radical for the technology industry. They believed that private communication should remain private in a fundamental sense. Not private in the qualified, conditional way that corporations describe privacy when they are quietly mining your data, but private in the sense that the people who built the system did not want access to your conversations at all. They charged a small annual subscription fee specifically to avoid the advertising business model and the inevitable data extraction that advertising requires. They built something that worked precisely because it refused to do what every other technology company was doing. And then, in 2014, Facebook bought it for $19 billion, and everything that promise stood for it began a slow, methodical, perfectly executed dismantling. Both founders eventually left. Jan Koum walked away in 2018 after years of reported internal conflict with Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg over how aggressively Facebook intended to monetize WhatsApp user data. Brian Acton left earlier and then did something extraordinary. He took $50 million of his own money and used it to fund the development of Signal, the encrypted messaging application that has become the only major competitor still operating on the original WhatsApp philosophy. In a now famous interview, Acton publicly stated that he had, in his own words, sold his users' privacy. Read that again. The co-founder of the application that 3 billion people use every day to share their most intimate thoughts publicly admitted that the acquisition deal was a betrayal of the users who trusted his product. That admission should have been front-page news in every country where WhatsApp dominates. Instead, it was reported quietly, absorbed by the news cycle within days, and forgotten by almost everyone who actually needed to hear it. The people who built WhatsApp left because they saw exactly where it was heading. May 2026 is one of the destinations they were trying to warn the world about. Now here is the technical truth about what Meta is doing in 2026. And you need to follow this carefully because the company has invested enormous resources into making this look like something it is not. The centerpiece of Meta's 2026 AI rollout is a technology called private processing, which the company first announced at its LlamaCon Generative AI conference in April 2025, and which went into broad consumer launch in May 2026. Private processing uses what is called a trusted execution environment, often abbreviated as TEE, which is essentially an isolated hardware enclave inside a server processor that is designed to be invisible to Meta's own engineers, logging systems, and broader infrastructure. On paper, when you send a request to Meta AI inside WhatsApp, that request travels through an encrypted channel, gets processed inside this isolated environment, generates a response, and then the entire session disappears with no data retained. Meta is marketing this loudly. The company is presenting it as a privacy breakthrough, even comparing it favorably to Apple's private cloud compute system, and is loudly stating that not even Meta itself can see what happens inside private processing sessions. The technical architecture, taken at face value, sounds genuinely sophisticated, but here is what most people are not seeing. The existence of private processing as a privacy feature for AI interactions does not actually address the central concern that brought us to this moment in the first place, and the careful framing of Meta's announcements is specifically designed to make you think it does. The fundamental question has never been whether Meta could technically engineer a private channel for some AI interactions. The fundamental question has always been what happens to the rest of your data. Your normal messages, your voice notes, your photos, your contact patterns, your group conversations, your behavioral signals. Once Meta AI becomes structurally embedded into the application you use every day. Private processing applies only to specific Meta AI interactions that you knowingly enter into through features like incognito chat or the upcoming side chat. It does not apply to the broader integration of AI capabilities throughout WhatsApp. It does not apply to AI-driven message suggestions. It does not apply to AI-powered group features. It does not apply to the data that Meta gathers about how you use the application, who you communicate with, and what patterns emerge from your daily behavior. The privacy showcase is real, but it is a privacy showcase for a small subset of interactions, while the broader expansion of AI into your messaging environment continues exactly as planned. This is the most important distinction in the entire policy framework, and it is the distinction that Meta's marketing is engineered to blur. Think about what they are doing strategically. They are introducing a highly visible, technically impressive privacy feature at precisely the moment they are also implementing the most expansive AI integration in the application's history. The privacy feature becomes the public face of the rollout. The expansion becomes the structural reality. Users see headlines about incognito chat and private processing and walk away believing that Meta has actually addressed privacy concerns about WhatsApp AI. They have not. They have addressed one narrow category of concern through a feature most users will never even use, while the broader architectural shift continues exactly along the trajectory it was always going to follow. And here is where this gets significantly worse. The new AI model that powers Meta's expanded WhatsApp integration is called Muse Spark, released in April 2026 specifically for deployment across Meta's consumer applications. Muse Spark is more capable than any previous Meta AI system at processing conversational context, understanding intent across multi-turn discussions, and extracting meaningful patterns from the kinds of casual, informal, emotionally rich content that people share inside messaging applications. The capability profile of this model is not designed for narrow, task-specific interactions. It is designed for deep contextual understanding of human communication. The deployment of a model with these specific capabilities into WhatsApp's 3 billion user base is not happening because Meta needed a better chatbot. It is happening because the company has reached a stage in its commercial development where understanding the substance of human conversation at scale has become essential to the next generation of its advertising business. The advertising context here is what most users are not connecting to the technical announcements, and it is the thread that makes everything else make sense. Meta's advertising business generated more than $130 billion in revenue in 2024 alone, making it one of the most profitable commercial operations in human history. That business is built on one competitive advantage, which is the precision with which Meta can target advertising to specific individuals based on detailed behavioral knowledge. For most of the past decade, that targeting precision has been built primarily on data from Facebook and Instagram, where people post publicly, engage with content visibly, and reveal their interests through observable behaviors. WhatsApp has always represented an enormous untapped opportunity from this commercial perspective, because the conversations happening inside WhatsApp are categorically more valuable for advertising targeting than anything available on the public social platforms. When you message your spouse about a health concern, when you discuss a major purchase with a friend, when your family group debates a vacation destination, you are revealing the kind of actual intention data that public social media posts rarely contain. Integrating AI processing across WhatsApp is, from Meta's commercial perspective, the unlocking of an advertising data resource of unprecedented richness and intimacy. There is also a structural problem with the opt-out mechanisms that nobody's explaining clearly, and this is where the individual privacy controls Meta is offering become significantly less protective than they appear. If you opt out of Meta AI data processing on your personal account, your individual messages going through Meta AI features may be excluded from certain types of model training. That is a real benefit. But your privacy inside WhatsApp does not depend solely on your own settings. It depends on the settings of every single person you communicate with and every group you participate in. If you are part of a family WhatsApp group and your uncle has not opted out and your cousin who administers the group has enabled AI features, your messages in that group exist in an AI processing environment, regardless of what you configured on your own account. If you send a message to a friend who has not adjusted their privacy settings, your half of the conversation enters a different data environment than what your personal opt-out implies. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the structural nature of social communication applied to a privacy framework that pretends to offer individual control. Your communications are inherently shared. Your privacy choices cannot be unilaterally enforced across a network of relationships where everyone else is making their own decisions. And then there's a development that almost nobody outside of legal technology circles has noticed, but that fundamentally changes the stakes of what happens to your AI-mediated conversations. In February 2026, a court ruling established that conversations between users and AI chatbots can be used as legal evidence in civil and criminal proceedings. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. Your interactions with Meta AI inside WhatsApp, whether you realized it or not, exist as legally discoverable records that can potentially be subpoenaed during divorces, business disputes, criminal investigations, regulatory proceedings, and any other legal context where the substance of your communications becomes relevant. Private processing is partially designed to address this concern by ensuring that certain Meta AI sessions are not retained on Meta's servers, which is why the company is marketing it so aggressively. But every Meta AI interaction that occurs outside of private processing, which will be the overwhelming majority of AI interactions in the application, exists in a data environment where legal discovery is possible. The expansion of AI throughout WhatsApp is also, simultaneously, an expansion of the surface area of your communications that can be reached by legal processes you may never have anticipated. The regulatory environment surrounding all of this is its own story and worth understanding, because it reveals both how seriously some governments are taking Meta's approach and how limited their actual ability to constrain the company has been. The European Union has been the most aggressive regulator. In December 2025, the European Union launched an antitrust investigation specifically into Meta's WhatsApp AI access policy, focused on the fact that Meta was using its dominant position in messaging to block third-party AI assistants from the platform while integrating its own AI deeply into the user experience. Meta has agreed to certain modifications for European users, specifically to avoid additional GDPR fines. But those modifications create a two-tier privacy reality where European users receive protections that users in the rest of the world do not. India's Competition Commission fined Meta over 213 crore rupees, which is approximately $25 million, over WhatsApp's 2021 privacy policy update and the data sharing practices that came with it. The Irish Data Protection Commission, which serves as the lead European regulator for Meta because the company's European headquarters is located in Dublin, has previously imposed fines of 225 million euros, 405 million euros, and 1.2 billion euros across various Meta privacy violations in recent years. These are large numbers in absolute terms. They are also less than 1% of Meta's annual advertising revenue, which means they function as a cost of doing business rather than as a meaningful constraint on the company's behavior. The fines have not changed the trajectory. They have only created a slightly more expensive version of the same trajectory. For users outside the European Union, the legal protections are dramatically weaker. And this matters because the overwhelming majority of WhatsApp's 3 billion users live in countries with limited or essentially no privacy legislation covering this category of data processing. The 2 billion plus WhatsApp users in India, Brazil, Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Mexico, the Philippines, and dozens of other countries where WhatsApp is the dominant communication platform are operating with effectively no regulatory protection from the May 2026 changes. They receive the same policy notifications written in the same deliberately complex legal language. They are presented with the same opt-out options that work imperfectly across group communications. They have no equivalent of GDPR to enforce meaningful consent requirements. And they have no realistic capacity to coordinate the kind of collective regulatory response that has at least slightly slowed Meta's progress in Europe. The May 2026 changes hit these users hardest with the fewest tools to resist them. This is why the comparison with Signal matters so much, and why understanding the comparison is itself an act of resistance. Signal operates on a completely different institutional foundation than WhatsApp, and the difference is not a matter of policy or commitment, but of fundamental architecture. Signal is a non-profit organization. It has no advertising business. It has no commercial incentive to extract data from its users because its operational survival is funded by donations rather than by the monetization of behavioral information. The $50 million donation that Brian Acton made to fund Signal's development was specifically intended to create an alternative that could not be commercially captured the way WhatsApp was captured. Signal's encryption architecture is designed so that Signal itself cannot read your messages, cannot access your contact list, cannot determine who you communicate with, and cannot extract any meaningful data about your usage. This is not a privacy claim that exists only in policy documents. It has been tested in actual legal proceedings. When the United States Department of Justice subpoenaed Signal for user data, the company was legally compelled to disclose what it had. And what it had was exactly 2 pieces of information per user: the date the account was created and the date the account last connected to Signal's servers. Nothing else. Not because Signal refused to provide more data, but because the architecture of the system meant that no other data existed for the company to provide. This is the contrast with Meta's approach to WhatsApp data, and it could not be more complete or more instructive. Now, let us get to the specific steps that you need to take immediately, because awareness alone is not protection, and the time to act is right now before the policy rollout deepens further. The first step is to locate the Meta AI data settings within WhatsApp itself, which Meta has positioned in a way that requires deliberate navigation rather than offering through any prominent interface. Open WhatsApp on your phone. On Android devices, tap the 3 vertical dots in the upper right corner of the main screen and select Settings. On iPhone, tap the Settings tab at the bottom of the screen. Once inside Settings, navigate to Privacy. Inside the Privacy section, you're looking for any option related to Meta AI, AI features, or AI data usage. Meta has a documented history of moving privacy settings between application updates in ways that make them harder to find consistently. So if the AI option is not immediately visible under Privacy, check the Account section and the Chat section as well. There's also a feature called Advanced Chat Privacy that became available across WhatsApp in spring 2025, which, when activated, technically blocks Meta AI from processing content in specific chats. Enable advanced chat privacy for any chat or group where you discuss sensitive matters, because activating this feature is one of the most effective tools currently available for limiting AI processing of specific conversations. The second step is to visit the Meta Privacy Center at privacycenter.meta.com using the account credentials associated with your WhatsApp. The Privacy Center is the centralized hub Meta provides for managing data settings across its family of applications, and it contains controls that are not accessible from within WhatsApp itself. Find the section related to AI and data usage. Opt out of every category of optional AI training data used that the interface presents. Be aware that some settings are technically described as opt-out options, but are presented in ways designed to discourage opt-out completion. Read each setting carefully, opt out of every category that is genuinely optional, and after completing this process, take screenshots of each configured setting with the date visible. The screenshots matter because Meta privacy settings have been documented to reset after application updates without explicit user notification, and having a record of your stated preferences provides both personal verification and potential evidence for any subsequent complaint to a data protection authority. The third step, available to users in jurisdictions with applicable privacy legislation, is to submit formal data subject requests through Meta's official process. European Union residents under GDPR, United Kingdom residents under UK GDPR, California residents under the California Consumer Privacy Act, and residents of several other jurisdictions with privacy frameworks all have legal rights to access the data Meta holds about them and to request deletion of historical data. Submit a data access request to receive a comprehensive copy of what Meta has collected about you. Submit a separate data deletion request to remove information that has already been gathered. These requests do not prevent future data collection that occurs under your continued use of WhatsApp, but they address what already exists in Meta's systems, and they create a formal record of your exercise of privacy rights that can be referenced in any subsequent regulatory complaint or legal action. The fourth step is to conduct a serious review of your WhatsApp group memberships, because the structural problem with group-level AI processing means that your individual opt-out provides incomplete protection in the group environment. Look at each group you participate in and make a deliberate assessment of how sensitive the information regularly shared in that group actually is. Family groups where health concerns are discussed, friend groups where personal struggles are shared, professional groups where confidential business matters are exchanged, community groups where political opinions are expressed, and any group where you would not want the substance of conversations to be commercially analyzed, all deserve careful consideration. For the groups with the most sensitive content, you face a real choice between accepting the limitations of your protection in that group, having an honest conversation with other group members about settings and AI features, or moving the sensitive parts of those conversations to a different platform that offers stronger structural protection. This is not a theoretical concern about hypothetical future harm. This is a practical question about ongoing processing of currently sensitive communications. The fifth step is to actually talk to the people you communicate with most frequently on WhatsApp about what is happening, because privacy in a social application is inherently a collective matter, and your individual choices alone cannot protect your conversations. The family members you message every day, the close friends in your daily chat threads, the professional contacts you correspond with regularly, all need to know that this policy change exists, what it does, and what they can do about it. Share this information directly. Send them the opt-out instructions. Explain why this matters. When you message someone on WhatsApp, both parties to the conversation are subject to the data policies applicable to their respective accounts, which means that conversations between two people who have both opted out exist in a meaningfully different data environment than conversations where only one party has acted to protect their privacy. The opt-out you complete on your own account protects your side of the conversation. Educating your contacts gives them the opportunity to protect theirs. The sixth step is to make a genuine evaluation of whether WhatsApp remains the appropriate primary platform for your most sensitive communications, and to recognize that this evaluation does not need to be binary or immediate. Most people who think honestly about this question find that their WhatsApp usage naturally separates into two categories that are quite different from each other. There is a large category of casual, broadly social communication, where many people are involved. The content is not particularly sensitive, and the practical privacy implications of the May 2026 changes are real, but limited in scope. There is also a smaller but more important category of genuinely intimate communication, involving health, finances, relationships, professional confidentiality, personal beliefs, and other matters where the combination of expanded AI processing, group-level data sharing, advertising integration, and legal discoverability creates a meaningful privacy exposure that platforms like Signal would not create. The recommendation is not to delete WhatsApp entirely. The recommendation is to make a thoughtful, deliberate decision about which conversations belong on which platform, and to gradually migrate the most sensitive conversations to applications whose architecture makes the protection you need structurally possible rather than just contractually promised. The seventh and final step is to treat all of this as the beginning of an ongoing practice rather than as a single one-time action that you complete and forget. Meta's policies are not static and have never been static. The settings you configure today may look different after the next application update. The opt-out mechanisms that are accessible right now may be modified or repositioned after the May 2026 rollout is fully complete. The protective tools available before the rollout may not exist in the same form afterward. Privacy protection in the current technology environment is not a form you fill out once and forget. It is a continuous practice of attention, regular auditing of your settings, awareness of policy changes as they happen, and willingness to take action when circumstances shift. Follow privacy-focused organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Privacy International, and the Norwegian Consumer Council, all of which track platform policy changes professionally and publish timely analysis when significant changes occur. The next major shift in Meta's WhatsApp policy is not a question of if, but of when. And being informed early is the only meaningful protection against being affected by changes you never had the opportunity to consider. Here is the truth that sits underneath all of this. The truth that Meta's carefully managed corporate communications are specifically designed to keep at the periphery of public understanding rather than at its center. The 3 billion users of WhatsApp are not customers in any traditional sense of that word. The actual customers of Meta are the advertisers who pay enormous sums of money for precision access to your attention, your behavior, your relationships, and your intentions. The product that Meta sells is you, and the May 2026 policy changes represent the most significant expansion of the raw material extraction process that has been ongoing since the moment Facebook wrote that $19 billion check in February 2014. The acquisition price was never paid for software code, which can be replicated, or for technical infrastructure, which can be rebuilt. The $19 billion was paid for access to the conversations, relationships, behaviors, and data of 3 billion human beings who had built their daily lives inside a single application and had trusted that application with their most private communications. Every policy change since that acquisition has been a step in the systematic process of monetizing that trust. The May 2026 update is not the final step in that process. There will be more steps after this one, but it is the most significant step yet in terms of the depth of access it grants to the most intimate category of user data that WhatsApp contains, and the steps that follow will build on the access this rollout establishes. The deadline arrived on May 13, 2026. The opt-out mechanisms that exist right now are probably more accessible than what will be available 6 months from now after the policy fully settles into the application's architecture and the company's defaults have shifted in the direction Meta intends them to shift. The time to take protective action is not later. The time is right now, before the baseline drifts further, before more of your contacts give up trying to navigate increasingly complex settings, and before the window for the most straightforward form of resistance closes for good. 3 billion people trusted a messaging application with their private lives. Most of them still do not know what has happened. Now you do. The question that remains is what you do with this knowledge, and whether the people in your contact list, your family group chats, your closest friendships, the people whose conversations with you are just as exposed as your own, are going to find out before the next phase of this rollout reaches them or only after. That answer is not for Meta to decide. It is not for me to decide. It is entirely for you to decide, and the deadline for that decision is already here.